Polling stations open in Ghana as 15.7 million voters are expected to elect new leaders in the West African nation. The UN raises concerns about an estimated 100,000 people trapped in the ongoing South Sudan conflict. Donald Trump says he wants to cancel the out-of-control order with Boeing for presidential jets. Hello, it is 3 p.m. East African time. Welcome to Worldview. My name is Sophia Wanuna. To our top story this afternoon, an earthquake off Indonesia's northern province has killed at least 97 people, and the military officials are the ones reporting that, and the magnitude 6.5 quake that is just off the northeast coast of Sumatra Island, where dozens of buildings have collapsed and many people are feared trapped under rubble. Hundreds of people have been injured. In 2004, a huge undersea quake off the coast of the northern province caused a tsunami that killed more than 160,000 people in Indonesia alone. There was no survey and tsunami after Wednesday, tremor, which the U.S. Geological Service said struck just offshore at 5 a.m. local time. Now let's go to Ghana, and nearly 15.7 million Ghanaians are voting in the presidential and parliamentary elections, and that is across Ghana. Analysts say it is a tight race between President John Mahama and veteran opposition leader Nana Akufo-Addo. There are a total of 7 presidential candidates who have pledged to keep the process peaceful. The campaign has been dominated by the faltering state of Ghana's economy and the issue of corruption. Results are expected within 3 days. A runoff will be held later in the month if neither of the two main candidates secures more than 50% of the votes.
Verified.
Things have got out of hands, and so there's a need to elect a new president who will be for the people, the heart of the people will be at his heart, very caring, very tolerant, uncorruptible president, and the president who will make sure money that belongs to the state, if you squander them, you will be punished.
My favorite president comes, every bad thing going on in the country will change and job will come. So I'm sure that it will come to pass if that person comes on.
I'm a graduate and I'm very happy to partake in this election. It's one of the toughest elections in Ghana. And any party, as whether MPP, NDC, CBP, any party that comes out to win this election, we are all going to support that party, irrespective of whether we are that party or not. So our main concern is for that party to solve the employment sector.
With just hours left before voters in Ghana head to the polls, well, they have actually gone to the polls, so it's not hours left for that. I beg your pardon. Presidential candidate Nana Akufo-Addo said the country's democracy is in a critical space. He hopes to unseat the incumbent President John Mahama, an exporter of gold, cocoa, and oil. The West African country was once hailed as a regional growth model, but has lost its luster after taking on too much debt. Here now is a piece of action from the final campaigns that we saw ahead of today's elections.
A sea of colourful supporters fills the stadium in Ghana's capital, Accra. They're here to see President John Mahama, who's been in power since 2012. Ghana's president is seen as a man of the people, but as the economy slows down, he's forced to defend his record.
We have done much work in this country, Ghana, but more needs to be done. And we can only advance faster if we press on and stay the course.
Mahama's main opponent, Nana Akufo-Addo, accuses the ruling party of mismanaging the economy and allowing corruption to flourish. It's the second time the two candidates have faced off.
Our program, I think, is more acceptable to the people because of the circumstances in the country. The president and his party have run the economy of Ghana poorly, and it has brought a lot of difficulties for the Ghanaian people, and that is why I think we have a good chance of winning.
Daily power cuts and double-digit inflation are making life more difficult for Ghanaians. Despite being a resource-rich country with cocoa, gold and diamonds, government revenues have plunged in line with a drop in commodity prices. And with a quarter of the population living under the poverty line, money is the #1 concern.
The dollar is high, so everything is up. So you won't change, but the other one come.
It's a hotly tested election, but there's no expectation of widespread violence. If there's no outright winner on Wednesday, a second round could take place in December.
Right, let's get you more informed about the Ghanaian elections, which is underway. So there are a total of 7 candidates, but we'll just tell you about the 2 frontrunners. One of these 2 men will be Ghana's next president. One of them is the incumbent, and this is NDC candidate, NDC standing for National Democratic Congress Party. So he, John Dramani Mahama, is 57 years old, served as vice president under the late president, John Atta Mills, was elected president in 2012. He's now seeking re-election after serving his first 4 terms since 2012 to now. It has been 4 years of serving the people of Ghana. His father was First Minister of State for the Northern region. So that one of the front runners. Then let's go to the other candidate. It will be either of these 2 men, as I said, that will be Ghana's next president. So NPP candidate, NPP standing for New Patriotic Party, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He's 72 years old. He's campaigned for a return to multi-party democracy under military rule. This was one of the very passionate projects and pushes he made. Also a former justice and foreign minister from 2001 to 2007. He's running for president for a 3rd time. He has run twice before, of course, and lost. His father was a chief justice and ceremonial president as well. Now, a very interesting fact I've just been reading up a little bit as well on this election is that since 1992, Ghana's presidents have all had the name John. So very interesting to note, since 1992. So if he becomes president, he'll be the first president who's not called John. And also, one of the other things to note is that Ghanaians have had these comparisons between the elections and the elections in the U.S., in that when the Democratic Party in the U.S. wins the election, then the NDC in Ghana would win the election. So it will be interesting to see now that the Democrats lost in the U.S. elections, will it mean that they will, the tradition in as far as what they've seen play out in the last couple of elections since 1992 happen as well. But let's get more insights from a man who is in Ghana. His name is Sam Ato Afu. He's a journalist there. Sam, thank you so much for making time for Worldview this afternoon. Talk to us about the elections. Did everything kick off and it's going on as expected?
Yeah, good afternoon and greetings from Ghana. First of all, let me keep in this one. Yeah, it's about the John issue, and like you rightly said, if Nana Akufo-Addo wins, then he breaks the chain of the John. Then it means that John Mahama would have been the 3rd and the last John to rule Ghana. However, if you look at the comparison between Ghana and then the U.S. elections, for example, for President John Mahama's party, he has done 8 years, but Mahama as a candidate hasn't done 8 years yet. So a bit of difference in there. Now coming to the election itself. So far, it's been very, very peaceful. There have been a few pockets of misunderstandings, and mostly it came out of confusion over splitting of the polling stations that had many people on their register. So, for example, there was a KTN polling station, and then there were many people on the register. The Electoral Commission split the center into 2, and people had not been informed earlier. So some people go join queues and then it takes about 30 minutes to get to their tent, and they are told that you are supposed to rather go to, say, the B session, and then so they get educated. So those ones were the C committees, but then they've been sorted out. Now, there's also a short code being advertised for voters to text their voter ID number, and then it tells them immediately where they're supposed to go and cast their ballots. So that's also helping to calm tensions down. But so far, it's been very, very peaceful. There are still long queues that have been seen at most of the polling stations. In most cases, voting started at 7, but some other places it started late. And by 8 o'clock, almost everybody had started voting. So far, it's been very peaceful. Like I said earlier, most offices did not open today, and those which open have closed or are about closing. Most are being halfway. Food vendors did not also show up today. So I mean, funny enough, people also complain that they're not getting food to eat. Those who didn't eat at home, they're not getting food to eat, and then transport business is booming today, and it started yesterday, was booming, today it's booming. People are still finding it difficult to get buses back to their hometowns where they registered to vote. Now, the president has not voted yet, but the vice president has voted together with his wife. They both voted at different polling stations. A very popular figure in politics in Ghana, former President Rawlings, has voted. His wife has also voted. And then, like you said, there are 7 presidential candidates, and his wife is one of them. And so he was asked whether he voted for the wife, but he decided to keep quiet about that. He said, no, that's his own secret that he will not reveal. Now, Nana Akufo-Addo has also voted in his home country where he was for a long time. He voted so far. And so far, it's been good. Let me just all of you.
All right, Sam Ato, for unfortunately losing him there on that connection from Ghana, talking to us about the elections there, that they did kick off in good time as expected. However, a few issues here and there, especially in as far as mix-up in names and the polling stations. But we'll keep our eye on that election and bring you all the details as we get them. Let's come back now to Kenya. And patients seeking services at public health facilities will continue to suffer today as the nationwide health workers strike enters its 3rd day. Clinical officers are the latest to join the strike today after 2 days of industrial action by doctors and nurses. Cabinet Secretary Dr. Cleopa Mailu reporting progress in talks last evening, but a solution is yet to be found as doctors dig in. Doctors' unions maintain they will not call off the strike unless the government commits to implementing term of their collective bargaining agreement of 2013. The problem is set to be compounded further today, with clinical officers also donning their tools. At least 14 patients are reported to have died in the first 2 days of the strike.
I want to say the discussions are progressing. However, it's unfortunate we have not reached a point where we can say we have concluded our discussion to a point where we can say reprieve can be found to Kenyans who are suffering.
Doctors will remain on strike until such a day, until such a time that the collective bargaining agreement that we signed with the government of Kenya on the 27th of June 2013, and that was effective on the 1st of July 2013, is fully implemented and is paid in arrears of 3 years.
More on the health crisis. Let's cross to Nyeri, where Carol Nderi is standing by for us. Carol, tell us about this impact of the strike on Nyeri County.
Strike, and the regions are affected severely. Here in Nyeri County, for example, we just visited the Nyeri County Referral Hospital. It's a level 5 facility. The gates were locked, a scenario that is replicated in different parts of the country, and there were still people streaming in, hoping for some reprieve, that perhaps the white smoke has been spotted and there has been some sort of agreement between the government and the Medic's representatives, only to be disappointed at the gates and to be informed that there are still no services. Some of these people cannot afford to pay for services in private hospitals. And we did speak to the CEC, that is equivalent of the Minister of Health in Nyeri County, Dr. Charles Kidenchi, who said that the Nyeri County government is trying to work with the private hospitals, especially the church-based ones, such as Madari Hospital and Mary Immaculate in Muiga, hoping that, trying to appeal to them to subsidize their cost, because most people who visit public hospitals are, of course, really, it might be a strain for them to afford medical services in private institutions. And Dr. Gedenji, who is the CEC of Health in Nyeri County, as we've said that they did dispatch some medical supplies to private hospitals from the public facilities. Yesterday we saw some mattresses from the Nyeri Referral County Hospital being transported to Madari Hospital, because now there is congestion. Mothers in labor, the beds are filled to the brim, full capacity. They're having to create room. Other supplies as well from the public hospitals are being ferried to the private hospital. This is an initiative of the Nyeri County government. And as we've said, them appealing to the private hospitals to try and subsidize the cost. And Sophia as well, the minister here in Nyeri County, appealed to the doctors and nurses, those who feel that they can offer their services on a voluntary basis. He made it clear that on voluntary basis, then they can turn up at the facility to see if they can offer some assistance. But in public hospitals, Sophia, most relatives have already taken their loved ones away from these facilities. Some have gone home because really they cannot cater for the medical costs in private hospitals, and some are really straining to do so in the private institutions. Sophia.
All right, Carol, thank you so much for that update. Caroline Derry live in Nyeri for us. We now want to speak to our Dr. Mercy Correa, in-house doctor here on KTN News. She's joining us via phone. Mercy, thanks for joining us. So we have now the clinical officers joining the nurses and the doctors. Can now this be described as 100% paralysis in as far as healthcare is concerned in Kenya?
Thank you, Sophia. Good afternoon. As we had been saying to the morning, that this is a paralysis of the health sector as at now, because when the clinical officers now join the strike today, then it means medical services or clinical services are not being offered, or even if they are offered, it's not at the best and optimal level that they should be offered at. So we are actually monitoring the situation and hoping that the government and the doctors' union, the nurses' union, and the clinical officers will reach a consensus as soon as possible, Sophia.
Yesterday, we heard from the CS that they were unable to get and reach a consensus, that talks would continue. Do we know if there have been meetings today, and if so, how far and as far as progress, if at all, they've made?
Meetings have been ongoing since morning. I think the doctors' meeting started shortly before 11 a.m. or thereabouts today, and they have been held at Afia House the whole day. They have been in discussions. The meeting has been between the Ministry of Health officials, obviously, and from the Council of Governors. And so far, there is indication that there may be a solution to the current impasse, but we are actually keeping tabs on it. The government has given the doctors a proposal, and they were discussing and seeing if it's something that is workable with the doctors. So we're actually monitoring this, and as soon as we get any confirmation of the proposal and what the doctors have agreed on, we'll definitely be able to update you on it. But we know that the government has offered the doctors a proposal to consider to end the current impasse and hopefully to lead to resolving the current strike so that the doctors can go back to work with the immediate possible time. Sophia.
All right, Dr. Mercy Correa, thank you for that. We'll definitely be keeping tabs on that to see if there are any developments to keep our viewers updated. Let's move on to the United Nations. It's called for dialogue, reconciliation, and healing in Yei, South Sudan, while saying it is intensifying humanitarian support to the people in the region. Now, the team led by UN Humanitarian Coordinator Eugene Obusu visited the town last week, where the security situation deteriorated after renewed conflicts broke out in early July. Now, Owusu's visit follows a recent tour by the Special Envoy of the Secretary General on Genocide Prevention, who warned of a dire and deteriorating situation in the area. Now, UN Commission on Humanitarian Rights said ethnic cleansing was taking place in some parts of the country and that the stage was set for a genocide. UN staff and other humanitarian actors have frequently been denied access to Yei.
Clearly, what they need first and foremost is peace. This used to be a breadbasket of South Sudan. And without peace, Ye can never go back to where it used to be. We've agreed that we will work very closely on the humanitarian side, but also importantly on the issue of reconciliation, on the issue of peace, reconciliation, and healing.
We need security and peace. Peace will make people work hard, working in such a way that they will produce whatever they need for their sustenance. And once people have their own sustenance, even the cry of the people right away now that the economic situation is harsh will be overcome.
South Africa's main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has launched a legal bid to block government plans to withdraw from the International Criminal Court, saying the move was unconstitutional. Now, in October, the government notified the United Nations that it would leave the ICC, dealing a major blow to the troubled institution that was set up to try the world's worst crimes. Now, the DA lobbied for the High Court in Pretoria to nullify the decision, saying that the government had bypassed and undermined Parliament, which had ratified South Africa joining the court in 1998. The withdrawal is set to take effect next October, 1 year after the government notified the UN, making South Africa the first country to pull out from the court. Within weeks of South Africa announcing its withdrawal, Burundi and the Gambia formally submitted their notifications to quit the court.
Our citizens will no longer be able to ensure that the perpetrators of human rights abuses are prosecuted in the ICC. And that is a fundamentally important issue.
We are challenging the rationality and constitutionality of the decision by the South African government to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. We believe that that decision was taken unprocedurally, that our Constitution provides a procedure that was not followed, and for those reasons we believe that this court should strike down that decision as being irrational and unconstitutional.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says he wants to cut government costs by canceling the order for new planes to carry the American president. The president-elect told reporters on Tuesday at Trump Towers in New York that Boeing was, quote, doing a little bit of a number, end of quote, and the cost was ridiculous. The government has a contract with Boeing to build 2 or more new planes, which will enter service around 2024. Although Trump estimated the cost of the contract being $4 billion, White House has termed the quote as inaccurate. The Air Force first announced in January 2015 that Boeing's 747s would be used to replace the 2 current Air Force planes used to transport the U.S. president.
This morning about canceling the contract for the new Air Force One. Is that something you're serious about trying to do?
Well, the plane is totally out of control. It's going to be over $4 billion. It's for Air Force One program. And I think it's ridiculous. I think Boeing is doing a little bit of a number. We want Boeing to make a lot of money, but not that much money. Okay, thank you.
President Barack Obama has warned that the United States would not be able to wipe out terrorism with military might, as he offered a sweeping defense of his administration's national security record. In his final major speech on counterterrorism as president, Obama argued that his administration had been able to make al-Qaeda a shadow of its former self and had put Islamic State on its heels. The White House said Obama's national security speech had been planned long before the November 8th election and was not aimed specifically at the incoming Trump administration.
We need the wisdom to see that upholding our values and adhering to the rule of law is not a weakness. In the long term, it is our greatest strength. The whole objective of these terrorists is to scare us into changing the nature of who we are and our democracy. And the fact is, people and nations do not make good decisions when they are driven by fear. These terrorists can never directly destroy our way of life. But we can do it for them if we lose track of who we are and the values that this nation was founded upon. We help them rebuild. And over these last 8 years, we've demonstrated that staying true to our traditions as a nation of laws advances our security as well as our values. We prohibited torture everywhere, at all times, and that includes tactics like waterboarding. And at no time has anybody who has worked with me told me that doing so has cost us good intelligence. Terrorists want us to turn on one another. And while defeating them requires us to draw upon the enormous capabilities of all of our governments, we have to make sure changes in how we address terrorists are not abused. This is why, for example, we've made extensive reforms in how we gather intelligence around the world, increasing oversight, placing new restrictions on the government's ability to retain and search and use certain communications so that people trust us, and that way they cooperate and work with us.
The American warriors who was at Nuremberg says.
So let my final words to you as your Commander-in-Chief be a reminder of what it is that you're fighting for, what it is that we are fighting for. The United States of America is not a country that imposes religious tests as a price for freedom. We're a country that was founded so that people could practice their faith as they choose.
Right, you're watching Worldview here on KTN News. We thank you for staying with us. The show continues, and Trix Ingado is now joining in to bring us what World Press is covering on this Wednesday. Trix, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sophia. So let's take a look at what's making headlines across the globe and just take a look at sneak peek at our usual papers. And first of all, we're going to start with the East African that's focusing on the ease of doing business in Tanzania, which has gotten a little bit harder for people who are looking to invest in that country, especially when it comes to land. So the headline for that story on the front page of the East African is tough conditions for foreigners eyeing land for business in Tanzania. The rules have been changed as far as leasing land goes. It used to be 90 years, so someone could lease lands for at least 90 years. Now it has been cut short to 33 years, of course, and people who want to, especially foreigners who want to do work on land or invest in land in that country, will have to be doing it just basically for business and not owning it for any other reason. So things are changing in Tanzania, but of course this has been just part of the many changes that the current president, John Pombe Magufuli, has been enacting since he took office. And of course, this is one of them. It's going to be a bit different, a bit difficult for people who want to earn tracts of land for lengthy periods of time. I think the focus of this for the Tanzanian government is to make sure that the economy grows and that Tanzania benefits more from business that is done on its soil. So that's the East African for you. Let's take a look at the next paper and see what's making headlines, and that is Quartz Africa, that is focusing on Johannesburg and innovation. So the headline for that is Johannesburg company will build Africa's first homegrown smartphone. We know that the country has been importing, or the continent rather, has been importing phones, benefiting from other countries in terms of technology. But now Johannesburg and South Africa is breaking the ground and trying to come up with its own smartphone, which will be interesting to see in terms of what it takes to actually come up with quality smartphones that can compete in the entire entire world, because we're facing other conglomerates like Samsung, we have the Nokias, we have the Apple gadgets that are really a favorite for everyone across the globe, and especially in Africa, we have not been left behind as far as technology and phones is concerned. So this is a good thing for Africa, but it's only time could tell whether this will pick up and be something really good. Let's take a look at another paper that's making and see what's making headlines in the world. Let's move on to the next paper and see what's on that headline. We are having African news that's focusing on Ghana and the election that is ongoing. It has been a top story on this paper and many other publications across the continent. It is expected that this will be a peaceful election. We had Gambia just conducting their own election the other day, and it was successful. Yahya Jammeh, a leader who has been in office for 22 years, was actually who lost the election, and now we're having another president coming in. And then Ghana is expected to go. The elections have actually begun, and the current president has only served for one 4-year term. He's running for another term, and they're saying that this will be they will pass with flying colors in terms of being successful and democracy taking the day. People are being urged to come out and vote. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, who's a Ghanaian himself, came out on Twitter and said that people should come out to vote, should neglect any attempts to be provoked, and just make sure democracy is what is meant to be, and that whoever wins takes office and transition of power is smooth, and whether the other people lose and the current president remains in power, that this actually is done in a smooth way. So this is happening, right? It's a developing story. This website has been focusing on that and various just facets of that happening in West Africa. West Africa has had a good track record of having really good elections in the past few years. So hopefully this would be yet another example of democracy taking the day. Let's move on to the next paper, which is the Washington Post, and it's focusing on Donald Trump. So corporate America is getting unnerved by Donald Trump's unpredictable style. He came out in day one. Donald Trump issued a public jab at Boeing and took credit for a Japanese conglomerate's month-long pledge to invest $50 million in the U.S., unannounced through a spokesman that he had sold his stock portfolio. So the reason he sold his stock portfolio, some speculators say, is because he needed money during his campaign, the dark times of his campaign, where his campaign was not really well funded. And other people feel that they predicted that there was going to be a conflict of interest, because when you have a stock portfolio, that means that you're actually an owner of parts of various countries across the United States. So being the president, it will be expected, a lot of people will feel like you're making policies that might benefit you. So all his stocks were actually sold a month prior to him taking the U.S. presidential election. So he's clear of controversy and conflict of interest as far as his business goes in terms of the stocks that he owns. Let's take a look at the next paper. The Guardian is focusing on Gambia and the win that actually happened. So the headline for that is new rulers vow to prosecute outgoing president. So Yahya Jammeh is allegedly, some of the people in position feel like Yahya Jammeh might actually lead a revolution or might have an insurgency down where in his farm where he wants to go stay. So he's being prevented from leaving that country because they want to prosecute him within the next year for crimes that he may have committed while he was president. And of course, or if that is not happening in Gambia, he might be taken to The Hague. So he's being prevented from going across the borders or moving to go abroad for whatever reason. They're saying the prosecution is going to take place sooner rather than later. And of course, they feel that there are allegations that he has bunkers and a stock of treasury in his farm near the border to Senegal. So they don't want to give him a lot of range of motion just to make sure he stays in the country. And he is prosecuted for alleged ills that he committed while he was president in Gambia for the past 22 years, since the year 1994, when he took over leadership through a bloodless coup. So that's what the Guardian is focusing on. Rather, it's not really the whole Guardian, but the African section of the Guardian. Now let's take a look at what's coming up in the next remainder time of our Worldview Bulletin. We are having a recap of our top stories. An An earthquake of Indonesia's northern Aceh province has killed at least 97 people, say local military officials. The magnitude 6.5 earthquake struck just off the northeast coast of Sumatra Island, where dozens of buildings have collapsed and many people are feared trapped under the rubble. Hundreds of people have been injured in 2004. A huge undersea quake off the coast of Aceh caused the tsunami that killed more than 160,000 people in Indonesia alone. There was no tsunami after Wednesday tremor, which the U.S. Geological Survey said struck just offshore at 5 a.m. local time. A spokesman for the Indonesian National Disaster Agency said more than 200 shops and homes have been destroyed, along with 14 mosques, a hospital and school were also badly damaged. That's what's making headlines on our bulletins. And before we continue with the bulletin, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, Sophia Wanuna will have more for you on Worldview. Sorry.